Barnett, 1 forward from UCLA. Number 0, Kevin Love!
You say you wanted to win. You wanted to win big. Is this what you anticipated to feel like?
Game 7 on the road. We come back to this. There's nothing quite like it. It's unbelievable.
Pass, Kevin Love sets his feet. The bottom! Oh, Love's in the air!
Love has to unload.
Love gets it back. Love fires a 3. Love knocks it down.
Love is in the air, deep in the rock.
This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, 3 ball. Perfect! Donovan run of the lane, locked the Mobley, pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo TV. Watch over 100 channels of live sports and TV for half the cost of cable. There's no contract and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com. The All-Star weekend is over, and unfortunately, so is the Cavaliers' tenure of Kevin Love. We'll get into all things All-Star weekend, but first, I think it's important that we talk about the last departing member of the 2016 championship team, and joining me today to do so is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good, man. I thought it was a fun All-Star weekend. But obviously, I'm a little sad. We've lost one of the best players in franchise history, a player who was integral to a title, and it's a little bittersweet, won't lie.
It's definitely bittersweet, and we'll get into the basketball aspects of all this a little later on the podcast, but I know Kevin Love was a really special player for both you and me, and I thought it was a good way for us to start things off by just kind of talking about why Kevin Love was so significant to both of us. So I'll let you lead things off first, Carter.
Yeah, absolutely. It's time to monologue, son.
Get on that soapbox, baby.
If you ever heard me on this podcast, you've always heard me talk about the team needing to be more than the sum of its parts. And I feel like Kevin Love at his best and his worst embodied that ethos and that drive. At times early in his tenure, those parts didn't seem to add up. LeBron took his court real estate, tweeted at him about fitting out, and Love's contributions just weren't adding up. But Love learned and figured out how to help. He spaced, he quickened his shot release, he found ways to do the dirty work. His much maligned defense became passable in the biggest moments. Even when his box scores weren't overwhelming, his impact was, all the way to the franchise's first and only NBA title across 4 straight finals runs. Love's post-LeBron career with Cleveland was similarly tumultuous, but even at its lowest, his basketball genius shone through. On teams comprised of young projects and mismatched parts, Love elevated everybody's game. Off the floor, we saw him become a mental health advocate for athletes across the nation. Last season, finally healthy, we saw it all come together on and off the floor. Love embraced becoming the veteran leader that a young core could rely on. He accepted a role off the bench, and he armed the coaching staff with an example of sacrifice they could always point to in order to keep the culture healthy. On the floor, he bombed away from 3 and served as a port in a storm for a young team while finishing up as the season's 6th Man of the Year runner-up. We might have hoped for much the same this season, but it wasn't meant to be. Kevin clearly wanted more than a vet. He wanted to be more than a vet who could just jump in for a pinch. Wanted to prove that he could still play, and that, along with a franchise accommodating a franchise legend, is why he's no longer with the team. It's a bitter thing to say goodbye to a player who's added so much, but this much is unassailable. The Kevin Love experience in Cleveland added up far beyond the sum of its parts, and I'll miss having him on the team, Justin.
That was really well said, man, and I think you did such a good job kind of summarizing all the different ways that it impacted this. And I said it on the last podcast before the news was official that I kind of wanted some time to get this right. And I still feel like I probably haven't had enough time to get this right. But for me, Kevin Love was just always one of my favorite players, even before he landed on the Cavs. So adding him at a time where my excitement was already at 11, it felt so surreal. LeBron was coming back with the return. Kyrie was still on the team. And while I echo everything that you said, Carter, about what made him so special on and off the court, for me, the reason it resonated so much was his work as a mental health advocate. And I've been open in the past about my own struggles with mental health. And to have Kevin Love, an all-star, a future Hall of Famer, and a star on my favorite team, be so honest and open about what he's gone through and what he continues to go through, it really resonated with me because it was so brutally honest. It wasn't someone just telling you to talk about your feelings and get help when you need it, which of course you should do, but being vulnerable in those moments where you didn't handle things well, to me, that just means so much, because owning up to mistakes, showing we're not perfect, but that we're trying to do better, like that is a lesson we can all learn from, whether you deal with, clinical mental health struggles or just the baggage that we carry in our day-to-day life. So the baggage that we carry, it impacts how we react to everything. But being honest that you're not always going to nail it, that you're not always going to be in perfect control, but being accountable when those issues come up and trying to do better, and being accountable to the people that really matter to you, that's something that I really admire and strive to be more like. So to have Kevin Love be kind of a shining example of that was always something that really, really mattered to me.
Absolutely, buddy. We're gonna miss him. It was a weird tenure. Never quite as simple and smooth as maybe you want it to be with a player who spent 8.5 years with the franchise. But you forget how much longer he's been a Cav than even he was a Timberwolf. It's certainly interesting now that we've kind of gotten our look at Kevin, and his legacy as a Cavalier out of the way. How do we feel about how this all shook out? I mean, obviously he's going to a conference rival in Miami, very possible first round matchup. How do you feel about how this played out in real time?
Yeah, it's something that I've been wrestling with a whole bunch, because I understand it. It's one of those situations where it's unfortunate, but it really did seem like there was a shift for the team, right? Like he was out of the rotation, and it seemed like the role, when you heard after the trade deadline, Kobe Altman and JB Bickerstaff talk about, we can foresee kind of a spot where Kevin can be helpful for us down the stretch. It kind of sounded like that's a Howell Neto type role, right? Where you're not part of the regular rotation, but if there's injuries or if there's a matchup where we like what you can bring, there's going to be an opportunity for you. And I understand Kevin Love in a contract year feeling like, hey, I'd like a little bit more of an opportunity. This is a guy that's already sacrificed so much. I think it's probably one of those situations where both sides are still, with this being so fresh, are thinking about how things could have been handled differently if you knew that this was kind of on the precipice of potentially being a buyout situation. But for me, I'm still processing everything, but it's just so weird that the tenure is over. Like there wasn't, this was something that I was actually actively thinking about on game 82, being like, hey, this could be Kevin Love's last regular season game with the Cavs, or this could potentially be his last game at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. That game has already occurred. We had no real warning of it, and we don't know when the next one's going to be. It could be game one of the playoffs, or it could be next season with him on a different team than even Miami.
Yeah, it's I'll tell you what, my real on court reaction here is, Dean Wade, you better be ready as we think you are. I think from a basketball perspective, the Cavs are worse. I've long been a Kevin advocate on the floor, even though the play had degraded to the point where it was like, hey, you probably have to start at least getting a quicker hook at minimum. But with that said, they needed him in that first play-in game against Brooklyn last year when everyone was clearly feeling the weight of the moment. Kevin helped calm them down a little bit. And I think they're a worse basketball team than they were a week ago without him. And there's a lot of, it's so hard to know, not being in the room, knowing whether this was a thing where they could have said no and not had it, tank the chemistry. But it is cool that they did the guy a solid, and let him pursue a place where he has a more quote unquote guaranteed role. But man, if Dean gets hurt or Jared or Evan get hurt, all of a sudden their front court depth looks a lot worse. And they have one less reliable person to try when they're in the foxhole in the postseason. So, I think that it's one of those things where I think this is not only the franchise doing Kevin a solid by all the reporting, but it's also a real, show of faith to the front court players they have right now that, hey, we think you're going to hold up. And I mean, obviously not accounting for injuries. So I'm interested to see if they decide to fill that last roster spot with a different veteran that maybe has a little bit more left in the tank than Robin, but and maybe a little bit more stylistic shooting, basically. But I'll be interested. I'll be interested to see kind of how they end up addressing this, and if this matters. Like, there's a real world chance where, like, Kevin's not in the rotation, he wasn't gonna be in the rotation, and Dean is fine in the postseason, and JB wasn't gonna turn to Kevin anyway. We just don't know. I always lean towards giving your coaching staff as many options as you can, but again, this isn't a game played on spreadsheets, and sometimes players have their own designs, and they're not cool being in that Howell Neto mode.
Yeah, no kidding. And especially if you feel like you do have more to give, right? And I was listening to Chris Fedor. He was talking about this on the Wine and Gold Talk today as well. Just trying to get more information, because obviously we're outsiders trying to rely on the beat as much as possible to kind of let us know what's going on. And a lot of it made sense. But what kind of stuck out to me was for Miami, because I was surprised. I thought he'd go to a situation where he had the best shot at a championship. And to me, that's not, hey, going from the East 4 seed to the East 7 seed right now, right? Like that to me isn't the cleanest path. I was thinking, maybe somewhere like Phoenix where there's a connection with James Jones, or even Philadelphia that was rumored. But it makes sense because Miami's got a real opportunity. Outside of Bam, there are no proven front court options. Like, team building isn't easy, right? Like, nobody's got a complete team these days. For the Cavs, it's Isaac Okoro, where he's done really good and he's worked really well in that lineup. But for most playoff teams, he's probably not starting at this point of his career. Kevin Love can play damn near starters minutes in Miami because outside of Bam, there are no proven front court options. And that's something that the Cavs just weren't able to offer. And from a Cleveland standpoint, to me, this kind of signals, at least when you're talking about what this team looks like when healthy in best case scenarios, we're now probably at a spot where the only guys that aren't playing multiple positions are like Garland, Mitchell, Rubio as the guards. Your bigs are Mobley and Allen. And outside of that, it's all guys that can play 3-4 or 2-3 or 3-2, right? Like, it's all wings outside of those kind of core pieces. And I think when you're talking about theoretical fit for the Cavs, this makes a lot of sense, but I agree with your sentiment. They're thin now in the front court, and unfortunately buyouts are one of those situations where there just isn't any winning, right? Like, you don't win when you're buying out a player.
No, and like, frankly, like, it's kind of surprising, like, just insofar as, like, this is something the Cavs did a lot when they weren't that good. You do a player a solid and you say, hey, we're not doing anything. We don't really need to have you in reserve. Whatever. Winning is not our number one KPI this season. So let's let you go somewhere where you want to go. This is not that. Cavs are trying to win, and if Kevin Love hits 2-3 threes against them in a post, 2-3 timely threes in a 4-5 matchup, they have in fact made a by the books damaging move. But again, there's the personnel side of this and the personality side of this where I don't suspect Kevin would have just been thrilled to hang out and be a cheerleader all year. So it is interesting. Even in the minutes where ever since he was benched, you've kind of noticed that JB has been more fine playing like super small ball, playing Isaac at the 4 or Karras at the 4. And I'm wondering if that's just something he wants to do more, because I feel like we've been seeing him do it a lot, and he's not in no way does he seem to feel obligated to play Dean minutes at the 4 if he doesn't think Dean is giving him great minutes on those days.
Yeah, and honestly, like Dean, we saw it last year. If he's playing with another big-ish type player, like he can play spot 5. Like I think if he was healthy down the stretch last year, he would have been playing the 5 over Moses Brown because he is a good rim protector. He's someone that can move his feet. I think he's more capable of playing the 5 at this point of his career than Kevin Love is even, right? Like I think Kevin is strictly a 4 at this point, but it's still big man depth, right? That we now have less of. So I definitely think to some extent it's a little bit of like, hey, the training wheels are coming off. Like you mentioned how Kevin was a hub and a kind of that option that they could go to against Brooklyn. Now it's going to have to be Evan Mobley, right? Like you're sink or swim. We're now kind of sink or swim with a lot of the young players on this team. Like there isn't a veteran that's going to do real heavy lifting. Even Ricky Rubio is maybe going to be a bit of a steadying presence at the time, but he's not going to do heavy lifting in a playoff series. We are now really the reins, the keys are all in the hands of the young guys, and we want to see how they do with it.
Yeah, and like I guess if you are of the opinion that like, hey, like it doesn't actually matter if Kevin Love helps them win a playoff game this series or this season because they're not winning the finals this year, and they're going to have to learn these hard lessons, and to that end, like maybe there is a real case just to saying, hey kids, figure it out. And if you fail, we at least have something to autopsy in the postseason. So it is going to be fun to see how JB manages his lineups because they are just a small team right now. I mean, obviously they were small the last 2-3 games, which is so funny given that they play this huge starting lineup. But most of their other lineups do not have a ton of heft at this point, especially with Robin out of the rotation. Do you think they chase a final body to fill that slot outside of the team, or would you just promote Diakite, sign Sharif Cooper to a 2-way, and go about your business?
To me, I think it's the latter. I don't know how much more Serge Ibaka has left in the tank. Great locker room guy, a good veteran to have. But unless there's new names that pop up on the buyout market, and I guess that's something to keep in consideration, my current preference is probably just to kind of promote internally, right? Like, I like the Diakite minutes that we've got this season, right? Like, I've actually been a little surprised when there were so many injuries that we didn't go back to him and just kind of played a more perimeter-orientated game in those games. But I think I would probably promote him and sign Sharif, or maybe they have someone else in mind for the 2-way. But that's probably the way I'd go, because then you're at least getting another guy under team control and maybe doing some evaluations for the future. Because, I mean, as much as Neto is a luxury, you're probably not going to be bringing him back next year. If I had to make an assumption, I'd be thrilled if he was back. But even if it's just something like having Sharif on that 2-way to be that third guard, I think that there's an appeal in that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think after kind of looking through the market and the available names, I think I would like just to run it with the guys they have. Diakite's earned it. He's been helpful at times. And again, I just like, someone in the chat, Steven in the chat just mentioned DeMarcus Cousins, and it's like, okay, like if he's got anything left, sure. But like, I just don't think that you're going to be playing DeMarcus Cousins in the postseason in games that matter at this point in his career. So why not just
that's a little too disruptive.
Why not just reward the guy who's been on your team all year? Get Sharif Cooper on a 2-way, who has been one of the best players in the G League all year, and roll with what you got. Like you already are kind of choosing to roll with what you got. Like why not just like lean in and play with the kids, see how far they take you, which to what we've said all year, I think is pretty far. And to the Kevin Love, losing the Love optionality in the postseason, that was always going to be a break glass in case of emergency option. It was a, hey, things aren't going so good, we need someone else to bring in a spark kind of move. Like Love was not going to be in the playoff rotation. So, again, barring playoff weirdness. So it is, as much as it's hard to like brush aside someone who's been as important to this franchise as Love has been over this near decade. Like the on-court impact, because was already benched, like it does feel like relatively negligible in the short term.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Right, like it's if we get hurt type of scenario, and we've had people in the Discord ask, well, would you go Isaiah Mobley as being the full-time contract? And I think just from a team control standpoint, with Diakite already having days up with the big club and whatnot, I think he would be the one that you give the deal to. I'm not 100% how sure all that's gone, but I mean, it is encouraging, right, that you do have Isaiah Mobley that's played so well in the G League. And I know you and I are both confident or at least optimistic that he can be part of the big man rotation in the future. So if you're rolling with the Mobleys, Allen, Dean Wade, and maybe another veteran option in the future, I can see that being fine. But it really does feel like we're now probably going to see a bit of a transition to the core exists. Ricky Rubio's the backup point guard. And outside of that, we have wings. We have guys that can play multiple positions, guys that can switch, guys that fit the skill sets that we need. And DeMarcus Cousins certainly doesn't fit that bill. And Carter, let's be honest, the other hang up with DeMarcus Cousins is he wears 0. And the Cavs announced
can't be done.
Cavs announced in the statement that they will be retiring Kevin Love's jersey, which is going to be a night that I'm going to cry like a baby. I already know.
By the way, it is nice that I did in the wake of this. I was really glad that they did sign Danny Green now. Like, okay, you lose a vet, but you add one that has title experience back. And by the way, I'm seeing some folks in the chat talking about Will Barton. They already addressed their spot at the wing. And I don't think I don't think they have room for Will Barton in their rotation right now, even if he was what he was a year and a half ago. So
all due respect to Will Barton, but I don't think there's anything that he brings that Karras doesn't already bring at a higher level.
Couldn't agree more. At literally every skill set.
Yeah. Like defense, playmaking, scoring, 3-point shooting this year, like his numbers are way down, and that's too disruptive of a piece, right? Like I think.
Yeah, you're looking for someone who can slot in. Like if it's a vet, like maybe someone like Ibaka, who isn't gonna do much more than take some pick and pop shots, try to block some shots, try to get some boards.
Or as Giannis said, you're a screen setter, a rebounder, and a role player.
I'll say it, Giannis is the villain in that one. That was too mean. Like you ever hang out with your buddies and like everyone's kind of digging at each other, and then someone just goes way too far, and you're like, bro. We were like having a good time here.
Well, to be fair, and our good friend Ty Windish pointed this out, Giannis is religious about his pregame naps, and I believe that FaceTime request came in as he was trying to get a pregame nap, and so sometimes we get grumpy when we don't get the nap. But while we're talking about social media content to begin with, it does feel nice that there was such an outpouring of, pardon the pun, love with Kevin being bought out. Like Kevin had a million posts, the Cavs had a bunch of posts, and like I'm sure, as I said before, both sides are probably thinking, hey, could we have handled this better, or what could we have done differently? But it doesn't feel like a contentious breakup like we've seen with other members of the 2016 team. And while it's still a weird set of circumstances and certainly unexpected, contrasting that to how some of these other situations went, it does make me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, finally we have a healthy divorce, man. If anything shows that the culture is better around this team, it's that we finally had a departure that just felt like kind of chill. It's a bummer, but like, not like an absolutely brutal thing where, everyone's kicking dirt on each other on the way out, I think that some of those fences have already been mended. You have JR coming to the game earlier this year and, getting a ton of love from the crowd. And I suspect, and, the LeBron thing is already pretty healed, but like it was kind of nice just to end things on relatively good terms with one of these players. But man, 7 years. It's been 7 years since that title. It's just crazy to think.
It really is crazy to think. Like, when we're looking back at kind of appreciating the Kevin Love experience, we got 9 years. You don't get 9 years with a player very often, right? Like,
No.
it's
Well, with the
pretty
exception
well
of Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, Isaac Okoro, they're all going to be here at least 12 to 20 years.
You just reminded me of a direction I wasn't planning on going, but I thought it was a really interesting conversation. I was listening to Carmen and Lima talk about this with Joe Thomas going to the Pro Football Hall of Fame and the Kevin Love buyout, and kind of, do you let players get into your heart the same way, or are you a little more guarded as a fan?
Literally
you're
never again. The decision broke that part of my brain.
Really, eh?
Yeah, it just in a lot of ways the decision was the end of my my sports innocence, with the exception of Tony Romo, who's my favorite athlete ever, and I love him deeply. I will hear no slander about his regression on the mic as a color commentary. I won't hear it. I don't even care if it's true. I'm so ride or die for that guy. But with the exception of that, I really do think I'm at the point now where, like, I'll really like a player, but I find myself actually gravitating to role players a lot more than the stars, because they're the closest to relatively normal humans. Like, just being a star for 5-10 years, just it does something to your brain chemistry after a while, and you're just in a different experiential stratosphere than me. And like I just know it's too fluid to all the way fall in love with a player, but I will like them, I'll enjoy their personality, but like I'll never, I think I'm just more aware of the game, I guess, as a fan now. So I will always maintain a little bit of distance between players these days.
I wish I could get to that headspace. I gotta admit, I still fall hard for players. Like, I want to be hurt, right? Like, I want sports to still, make me feel things. And I'm aware that it's a business. I now, what the decision did for me was learning to get to a place where, and I've talked about this before, but not living and dying with every game and getting disappointed with my team without getting angry. I think that was kind of the healthy transition I made. And the same goes for players, right? Like, this Kevin Love situation, I don't know, if I was 19 years old, probably would have annoyed me a little bit. But at this point, I'm a little disappointed. I don't love that he's on Miami. I'm not worried about it, to be clear. I'm really not worried about it. That may
I'm a little worried about Miami in the macro, just because I think they have a lot of things that make it hard for us. But like, we should beat Miami with or without Kevin Love, and the fact that they so desperately need a player that we couldn't find a minute for really shows kind of the state of that rotation for them, and some of their sunk costs elsewhere. That you like, their supplementary pieces have not been helpful the way that Miami's been able to find that in the past, and they really, really are reliant on their stars to carry them right now. So the fact that people are talking about Kevin Love starting for them right off the buyout market, like, it's a little, I'm a little stunned. And I know a lot of our Heat fan friends, I've been talking to our boy Hot Take Harry in the DMs about this the last few days. And he's like, man, just anyone who can shoot that is taller than 6'5", please make my team.
Yeah, that's a tough situation to be in. But getting back to what I was saying, like, I still really get a deep connection with these players. Like, Darius Garland, for me, is already kind of elevated himself into one of my favorite players to watch. Evan Mobley is coming along. Like, I find watching Cavs games a second time, I appreciate Evan Mobley that much more. Like, I get so excited with him and his growth. Donnie is already burrowing his way into my heart. Jared Allen. So for me, I still love the connection. I still like tapping into kind of childhood just appreciation for these guys. But it definitely does. It's a little different when you've been through it, you're a little less naive and you kind of understand that ultimately it is a business. But I think
I just feel like I'm more of a grown up, like, it's like, I just know, I know that like this kind of stuff is very fluid. You love it, you love a town, and but you also know that on the other side how fickle fans are, and how miserable some folks are, and how mean some folks are. And it's like, yeah, if I were a player, I'd keep my distance too. So like it's it's not like just I'm not trying to demonize players. I just think like I understand the business end of the relationship a little bit more. Even if I do have fondness for these players, I'm just not going to be like, LeBron's my buddy. Like, I know he's not my buddy.
He's not your buddy guy. Well, yeah, it still feels so surreal that Kevin Love is done playing for the Cavs. Next 2 games against Miami will both be in Miami, so we don't have that moment at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse unless he plays for them in the playoffs. But before we move on and talk about All-Star and kind of some of the other things that we have on the slate, do you have any kind of final thoughts about Love and his impact with the franchise?
I feel like I got it out in the opening monologue. I just think, again, like while it was a very tumultuous experience, I still think I got a ton out of it, and he meaningfully helped the franchise through multiple eras, which is not many players get to do these days.
Definitely got a ton out of it, just like we continue to get a ton out of Zoom. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects. Carter, I got a disapproving head shake there. You didn't like that one?
I don't know. That one felt poor taste. Poor taste.
Oh, poor taste. I thought it was just kind of forced.
No, it was certainly a little bit forced. No, I sometimes I just feel like I should challenge you. I don't always have a good reason for why I react positively or negatively to your segues.
That's fair. My fastball still isn't up over 90 miles an hour. Still feeling some of those lingering effects from too many mezcal margaritas. But
good for you.
We will continue to move forward. Carter, speaking of fun and games, All-Star Weekend is behind us. I gotta say, I enjoyed this All-Star Weekend. I tuned in for the majority of it. The All-Star Game, I did not enjoy as much. I think it was the least I've enjoyed a game in a while, but Donovan Mitchell did at least make some NBA history in it, becoming the first player to have 40 points and 10 assists in an All-Star game. Donnie being unselfish even in All-Star, Carter. How do you like that?
Well, I'll tell you what, I DM'd you about this, but of course, Jason Tatum, the out for him kind of superstar, chucking at every opportunity. Meanwhile, our guy, Donnie, is setting up. There's a play in the fourth where Tatum was so clearly gunning for the MVP and for the scoring record, where Donnie looped him a pass to the top of the arc and was flying towards the hoop for an alley-oop, and Tatum just took the 3, and I was like, oh, poor form. Poor form. But I'll tell you, I had a good All-Star Weekend. I feel like if you're getting a little grumpy about All-Star Weekend as a fan, but you still want to stay connected to the activity, it's a great second screen activity. And I think so many people are treating this like something they got to watch, like it's an NBA Finals game, and then they're getting grumpy about it. It's like, yeah, they're messing around. And if it's close, they'll play hard, and if it's not, they won't. And last 2 years it was close, so it was super fun down the stretch. This year it wasn't, so it was because Donnie and Tatum went absolutely bananas. Still, that there were some fun moments. The LeBron alley-oop to himself was bananas.
Ooh.
The Tatum Donnie explosion in the third was nuts. I really liked the Tatum Jason Brown or Jaylen Brown one-on-one duels. I thought that was really a silly little aside. If you're getting worked up, just don't watch. Just or put it on their second screen. I second screened a decent amount of All-Star Weekend, and I really do think it's the best way. I was hanging out with Kylie. I was hanging out with the kid. And every now and again I'd look down and watch the game, with the exception of the dunk contest, which got all my attention more than anything else, and I was very rewarded.
I love the dunk contest. I thought it was a lot of fun. I felt really bad for KJ Martin because I feel like he would have got all of those dunks down on the first try if he just got proper passes, and some of that's on his dad, some of that's on Jayshawn Tate, some of that's on the
Houston Rockets a point guard. Am I right, fellas?
I was about to say some of that's on the Houston Rockets for just not having a point guard. But overall, I thought it was so much fun. Trey was unbelievable. Like I thought he did such a good job. Just him and McClung both throwing them down on their first try every single time. I thought the dunk contest was a lot of fun. And, I do have to say, the skills contest, I liked the format better last year. I thought
I won't lie, Justin. I didn't watch the skills contest this year.
Oh, so what they did
once I saw the Antetokounmpos not featuring Giannis, I turned it off. That was literally my experience. It's like, oh, it's already started. I turned it on and I saw the Antetokounmpos doing a shooting competition with Drew Holiday, and I said, I will check you guys out later.
Not for me. Yeah, that's fair. I think with Drew replacing Giannis in that competition, if they wanted to improve the All-Star product, they could have had DG replace Drew in the actual game. But, that's, little minor notes.
I will say, watching that game, it's so clear DG was better than some of those dudes that were playing.
Thank you. He absolutely
must be said.
He is an all-star caliber talent, no matter what happened in that game. It's so funny now that you're not picking sides, or you're not doing East versus West, that you still kind of have that East-West split of all-stars. And I'm all for JJ Redick's suggestion to expand the all-star kind of rosters, because it's been this size since the league was smaller and since there was far less talent. I think it would be great to get more players in it. And of course, this is partly selfish because Cats are probably going to have 4 all-star candidates every single year moving forward. Because of course, as we've already established, no one's ever leaving. Everybody
never.
that I'm connected with is going to be here forever. But I thought it was a lot of fun. And I got to be honest, Carter, I think my new favorite event in All-Star Weekend is Rising Stars. I just think it's so much fun. I love
seeing the G League kids in there.
Scoot was fun. I was hoping to get a little bit more out of him, but I just love the format of kind of the 4 teams playing those mini tournaments. And honestly, if we are expanding the All-Star roster, it'd be fun to have a mini tournament in the big game, because then those guys are competing to stay on the floor a little bit longer. After you have the first 2 games, you can have your halftime concert so everyone gets a rest before the final. That could be a fun way to go about it. But Evan Mobley in the Rising Stars game looks so unfair. Like, they were playing competitive basketball and there was a bit of defense played, but it's so funny to see a guy that's not just, a system defender that if everyone's in position, I'm going to protect the rim. Mobley was still just making ridiculous defensive plays in just pickup basketball. Like, guys aren't paying attention and he just kind of pokes the ball out, goes full court, throws a no-look pass. Like, he was impossible, and Joakim Noah was not playing him in the final. And ultimately, they ended up losing because Mobley wasn't playing big minutes in that game.
Hey, listen, Joakim Noah is never going to, properly respect, the city of Cleveland or its denizens nor its players, and that's on him. Ultimately, he's going to have to carry that with him. But Mobley was great. The games were fun. I liked Rising Stars too, but I'm at the point now, Justin, where Twitter is so cacophonous during these things with all these suggestions.
That's a big word, though, buddy.
I know. It's just suggestions and format changes, and I'm not gonna be part of the discourse. Whatever you give me, NBA, I'm fine with. And if I'm not, I'll just much like when I saw honorary Antetokounmpo Drew Holiday bricking threes, I'll just turn it off. I'm fine with no one needs to fix the dunk contest. No one needs to fix All-Star. I don't care. I just want to, I'll just tune in for the silliness and have a nice time. And if I can get one more grumpy monologue off about the dunk contest, guys, it's hard. It's hard. Sometimes it's not going to go great. Like, we don't have to have like a referendum on the existence. How many times has the dunk contest been saved, Justin? 50?
A few times, yeah.
And like it's just hard, and their dunks are getting harder. So yeah, it's gonna be, sometimes you're gonna have a stinker like we had last year. Unfortunately, it happened to happen while we were there. But
honestly, I'm still happy that we got to attend that, because that was historic. Cole Anthony in the Timbs is something that I'm going to be able to tell my fictitious grandchildren.
yeah, well, sorry about your voice there. I know you get choked up when you talk about your grandkids that are never going to exist.
It was very emotional. Very emotional for me to talk about Cole Anthony's dunk attempts.
But like, to me, it's a win-win. It's either terribly cringe-inducing and everyone gets to roast, and Twitter's a blast, or you have what you had, this weekend, which was some absolutely insane dunks that I've never seen before. By the way, I also don't care about how famous the dunkers are. I don't care at all. Like, obviously it'd be cool if LeBron was doing it and big stars, but like, people act like Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon were household names before their dunk contest duel, and no, they weren't. They were just random young dudes that had shown some promise.
I remember getting really annoyed that who's this Donovan Mitchell guy beating Larry Nance Jr. in the dunk contest, and he ended up becoming a much bigger star, as we well know.
So I don't think any of this matters. It's fun when it's fun. It stinks when it stinks, but the fun is so cool that it's worth dealing with a few stinkers, because who cares? It's an hour of your life. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So shouts to Mac McClung for winning. Shouts to Trey Murphy, who I thought had some pretty nasty dunks, despite the commentators talking about how tall he was every time he did anything. And shouts to Jericho Sims for the double elbow idea. It just didn't quite work.
Yeah, you got to get both in on your
poor
first
guy
attempt.
was dunking to abject silence. That's rough.
I do have to say, I think the most annoying part was kind of putting down on the product throughout the entire broadcast.
Yeah, that's just what they do. They can't help.
I know it's just what they do, but it's not cool to hate things, folks. Honestly, it's not cool to hate things. You can't make that your entire personality. And there was a lot of cool stuff happening there. And I love the Alvarado game winner. His whole experience.
I love the Alvarado fake steal on Trey Murphy. That was awesome.
That was
I was
so
properly
much
surprised.
I was surprised. And you know what? It was playing off the expectation that, hey, we're going to botch some of these attempts. You're going to have a lob that doesn't necessarily go right. I thought that was so creative. And Alvarado winning the dinner bet with Donovan Mitchell that he was going to hit the game winner, and then hitting the game winner was a lot of fun. My whole biggest surprise of that was that Scotty Barnes didn't win MVP, because I thought you have to give him an award just for being on the team that won more games.
You are miserable.
I am miserable. Well, Carter, we've covered All-Star, we've covered Kevin Love. Do you have any thoughts on kind of where are you at now that Kevin Love is off the roster? Like, I know we talked about the concern with lack of depth, but do you like this kind of as a philosophy moving forward, where we're just trying to get as many wings as possible around this core? Like, I know it's something we've talked about in theory, but now it kind of seems like there's a shift, right? Like, if Dean Wade is the third big, because he is signed to an extension now, that kind of changes things, right? Like, now there's a little bit more of a need if he's playing more minutes at 4 or potentially 5, and fewer at 3, which we thought, hey, he's showing more of those skills to play on the perimeter.
I think we won't really know. I think this was something I think was foisted on the Cavs, not the inverse. I don't think the Cavs were like, Kevin, we're thinking we'll do a bunch of wings, so we're gonna bench you so you ask out so we can buy you out.
No.
Of course not what you're saying. I'm doing it for comedic effect. But with that said, I think we'll see in the offseason how Kobe wants to round out this rotation. He's got a big decision to make with Karis LeVert. And then he's got a big decision to make with that fourth big, because it's just been known that Kevin and Dean are like those guys for a long time. So having that flexibility open up, and what kind of player are they going to target? Are they going to go for maybe like a springier 4-5 that is a little more switchable, a higher end athlete, a helpful rim protector? Like do they chase not this player exactly, but like someone in the Brandon Clark archetype who just does something completely different from anything on their team, you know?
Yeah. I laughed because that was the exact player I had in mind when you were talking about that.
Yeah, or do they go try to chase, just more shooting, more just catch and shoot shooting, knowing that that what they have is something that works, and they don't really want a player that does something completely different from what they do. We're just not going to know till the offseason. I don't think this Kevin Love transaction really, other than just gives us more tape on what a smaller and more agile lineup is. And again, I talked about this with Chris Fedor when we had him on before the deadline, that one thing about not playing Kevin Love is that no one on the floor makes you compromise your defensive identity anymore. You don't have to change your scheme at all to accommodate one of your bigs. And like, is that going to be something they like enough to kind of hang on to that, as a philosophy moving forward? We'll find out.
Yeah, it's interesting because when this change was made, obviously it was made prior to the winning streak. I think Kevin's last game was that game against New York, which I think we saw again on All-Star Weekend, that just leaving Julius Randle open doesn't mean he's going to make every single shot. But, sometimes it still happens against us. But no, when that change was made, so Dean Wade slides into that spot, and honestly, it seemed to have guaranteed, at least right now, Jetty as part of the rotation, right? Like it's, hey, we're trying to find ways to get, as you said, not compromise our defensive identity no matter who's on the court, but we are getting Jetty more consistent minutes. We are getting Karras more consistent minutes. We believe in what Isaac's doing, and like you said, I think ultimately this really is, if it's not a vote of confidence, it's a test for the roster.
I think it's more of a test than a vote, and I'm excited to see how they come up against it.
Yeah, I think so too. We will be podcasting again on Wednesday. I want to mention that we are going to be doing a mailbag edition of the podcast. As usual, we will be calling out on Twitter for questions, but if you are not a Twitter subscriber and you want to send us some questions, you can do so by sending that to chasedownpod@gmail.com. If you're watching on YouTube right now, we really appreciate you guys supporting us. You can like, subscribe, click notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of that review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there, and until next time, go Cavs.